My breath caught in my throat. The marble floor beneath my feet turned treacherous in an instant, and I felt myself falling. Time seemed to slow as panic seized me, not for myself but for the life growing inside me. My hands instinctively shot forward to shield my stomach, a desperate attempt to protect what mattered most. I knew I couldn't stop the momentum, couldn't prevent the inevitable impact that would come. Then, suddenly strong arms wrapped around me. I collided against a solid chest, the familiar scent of pine and smoke flooding my senses. My heart hammered wildly, but the terror that had gripped me seconds ago began to ebb away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of safety. Myron, my alpha, the CEO everyone feared, the man who meant everything to me. Jarvis. His voice cut through the air, rough and laced with fear I'd never heard from him before. He held me so tightly I could barely breathe, as if releasing me even slightly would cause me to vanish. The usual confidence that surrounded him had cracked, revealing something raw underneath. Genuine terror. I tried to find my voice, to reassure him. I'm okay, I whispered, though my entire body trembled against him. The words felt hollow even as I spoke them. I wasn't okay. My legs felt weak, my hands were shaking, and the adrenaline coursing through me made it hard to think straight. Myron didn't set me down. His dark gray eyes searched my face, looking for any sign of injury, any indication that something was wrong. What I saw in those eyes wasn't just love or concern, it is possessiveness in its purest form, the kind of primal protective instinct that only an alpha felt for his omega, magnified 100 times because I carried his child. Who cleaned this floor? The question came out low and cold, each word dropping like ice into the silent office around us. The staff had frozen where they stood. No one moved. No one breathed. The tension in the air was suffocating. I asked a question. Myron's roar shook the very walls of the building. I'd known this would happen. Myron never handled anything calmly when it came to my well-being. And now that I was 6 months pregnant with his baby, his protective instincts had reached obsessive levels. But today was different. Today his rage burned hotter than I'd ever witnessed. Myron, please. I placed my hand on his arm, trying desperately to anchor him back to rationality. My touch usually calmed him, but right now I could feel the fury radiating off him in waves. He looked down at me, and for just a heartbeat, his expression softened. Jarvis, you could have lost our baby. His voice cracked on the last word, and something inside my chest shattered at the sound. Myron Grayson didn't show vulnerability. He didn't let anyone see him afraid. Yet here he was, in front of his entire staff, letting me see exactly how terrified he'd been in that moment. I pressed my palm flat against his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath my touch. But I didn't. You caught me. He grabbed my hand and brought it to his lips, pressing a fierce kiss against my knuckles. I'll always catch you, he promised, his voice steady again but still carrying that underlying tremor of emotion. Then his eyes shifted back to the assembled staff, and the vulnerable man disappeared. The Alpha CEO returned, his aura crackling with dangerous energy. Everyone, conference room. Now, I knew this was only the beginning. When Myron made that tone, when his jaw set in that particular way, nothing could stop what came next. As he carried me toward the conference room, still refusing to let my feet touch the ground, I realized that someone was going to pay for what almost happened. And in Myron's world, payment always came with consequences. The office had never been this quiet. Usually there was the constant hum of activity, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, conversations happening. Now there was nothing but the sound of footsteps as employees hurried to follow Myron's command. They knew better than to keep him waiting, especially when he was in this state. As we moved through the corridors, I caught glimpses of worried faces, people whispering behind their hands. Some looked sympathetic, others fearful. They all knew what had happened, or would know within minutes. In an office this size, news traveled faster than light. Myron's grip on me never loosened. If anything, he held me closer as we walked, as if reassuring himself that I was still there, still safe, still his. I could feel the rapid beating of his heart, could sense the war raging inside him between his need to protect me and his desire to unleash his fury on whoever was responsible for the slippery floor. Put me down, I whispered as we approached the conference room. I can walk. No. The single word was absolute, brooking no argument. I sighed but didn't push further. When Myron got like this, stubborn and overprotective, there was no reasoning with him. Besides, a part of me, the Omega part that I sometimes tried to suppress, found comfort in his protectiveness. It made me feel cherished, valued, safe in a way that nothing else could. The conference room doors loomed ahead, and I knew that once we crossed that threshold, there would be no turning back. Myron would make an example of someone today. He would ensure that this never ever happened again. And while part of me wanted to stop him, to tell him it was just an accident and accidents happened, another part, the part that had felt sheer terror when I started to fall, wanted justice too. Because it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about our baby. Our future. Everything we were building together. Myron pushed open the doors with his shoulder, still cradling me against his chest. The conference room was empty, but it wouldn't be for long. Soon it would be filled with nervous employees, all wondering if they were about to lose their jobs, all hoping they weren't the one who would bear the brunt of the CEO's wrath. He finally set me down in the leather chair at the head of the table, his chair, and positioned himself behind me, hands resting on my shoulders. The gesture was clear. I was under his protection. I was his priority. And anyone who had put me at risk would answer to him. As footsteps began echoing in the hallway approaching the conference room, I placed my hand over my stomach. The baby moved slightly, a gentle flutter that reminded me why Myron was so angry, why this mattered so much. We'd fought too hard to get here, overcome too many obstacles, to let carelessness threaten everything. The first employees began filing in, their faces pale and anxious. Myron's fingers tightened slightly on my shoulders, not painfully but enough that I could feel his tension, his barely controlled rage. This meeting would change things. I could feel it, and as much as I wanted peace, wanted to smooth things over and move on, I knew Myron wouldn't let this go. He never let anything go when it came to protecting what was his. The atmosphere in the conference room was suffocating. Every breath I took felt labored, as if the very air had thickened with tension. Myron had positioned me carefully in his chair, the expensive leather cool against my back, while he stood behind me like a sentinel. His hands rested on my shoulders, a gesture that was both protective and possessive, claiming me in front of everyone assembled. Explain. One word. That was all Myron said, but the weight behind it could have crushed stone. The room fell into absolute silence. I watched as the head of housekeeping, a middle-aged beta woman, whose name badge read Margaret, stepped forward with visible reluctance. Her hands twisted together nervously and I could see a slight tremor running through her frame. "Sir, the cleaning crew finished their routine maintenance this morning at 6 a.m. as scheduled." Routine. Myron's voice could have frozen fire. "My Omega is 6 months pregnant. He slipped on your routine." Heat flooded my face. He'd never publicly claimed me like that before. Never used those words in front of the entire staff. My Omega. The possessiveness in his tone sent conflicting emotions through me. Embarrassment at being discussed so openly, but also a deep, primal satisfaction that he wasn't hiding what I meant to him. Margaret's composure crumbled. "I'm so terribly sorry, Mr. Grayson. We had no— Sorry doesn't reverse trauma. Sorry doesn't save my child." Myron leaned forward and I felt his dominance roll through the room like a physical force. Every alpha had presence, but Myron's was overwhelming when he unleashed it. "You're fired. Security will escort you from the building within 10 minutes. Pack your personal belongings." "Myron." I grabbed his hand, the one that had moved from my shoulder to rest on the table. "It was an accident. These things happen." He looked down at me, and in his eyes I saw something that made my stomach clench. That possessive fury that alphas developed when their Omega faced danger. It was instinctual, coded into their very DNA. And right now Myron was riding that instinct hard. "Accident or negligence, Jarvis, I won't risk you. Not ever." "Please," I kept my voice low, meant only for him. "Don't destroy her life over this." For a long moment, Myron's jaw worked as he fought some internal battle. I could practically see him wrestling with his alpha nature, trying to find compromise when every instinct screamed for punishment. Finally he took a measured breath. "Fine. Suspended. 2 weeks without pay. And if there's even a hint of negligence from anyone in this company again, from any department, consider your employment terminated. Is that understood?" A chorus of quick nods rippled through the assembled staff. "This meeting is finished. Get back to work." Myron's dismissal was sharp and immediate. The room emptied faster than I'd ever seen people move. Everyone desperate to escape the oppressive weight of an angry alpha's attention. Within seconds only Myron and I remained. He moved around the chair and lifted me effortlessly into his lap, handling me as if I were made of spun glass, something infinitely precious and breakable. "You scared me, Jarvis." He buried his face against my neck and I felt his warm breath ghost across my skin. The vulnerability in that simple action made my throat tighten with emotion. I rested my forehead against his chest, listening to the still rapid beat of his heart. "I know. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing." He cupped my chin, tilting my face up so our eyes met. "Just stay close to me. Always. Promise me." I nodded, unable to form words around the lump in my throat. He kissed me then, slow and deep, pouring everything he couldn't say into that single connection. I lost myself in it, in him, letting the fear and adrenaline of the last hour melt away. My phone buzzed in my pocket, jarring us both from the moment. I moved to ignore it, but Myron caught my wrist gently. "Check it," he said, concern threading through his voice. With hesitation I pulled out my phone. Unknown number. The message was brief, but reading those few words made ice crystallize in my veins. "Enjoy his protection while it lasts." I must have made some sound, a gasp or sharp intake of breath, because Myron immediately took the phone from my nerveless fingers. I watched his face as he read the message, watched as every muscle in his body went rigid with tension. "How long?" The question came out dangerously quiet. I didn't want to answer, didn't want to see what would happen when I told him the truth. But Myron's eyes demanded honesty and I'd never been able to lie to him successfully anyway. "Since last week," I admitted, barely audible. Something flashed in Myron's eyes. Alpha fury in its purest form. 7 days. You've been receiving threats for 7 days and you kept it from me. I didn't want you to overreact." "Overreact?" He almost laughed, but there was no humor in it whatsoever. "Someone is threatening you. Threatening our baby. And you thought I would overreact by wanting to keep you safe." I placed my hand on his chest, feeling the tension coiled there like a spring wound too tight. "I thought they would stop. I thought it was just some random person trying to scare me." "You thought wrong." Myron pulled me against him, crushing me to his chest so tightly I could feel every thundering beat of his heart. "Starting now, you don't leave my sight. You don't go anywhere without security. You don't take chances with your safety or our child's. Do you understand me?" I nodded against his shoulder, but deep in my gut, I knew this was just the beginning of something much worse. Whoever had sent that message wasn't going to stop. They'd found a way to get to me to make me afraid, and they clearly had no intention of backing down. Myron's phone buzzed next. He read whatever message had come through and his expression hardened into something truly frightening. "I'm calling in additional security, private contractors who answer only to me. They'll be watching you around the clock." "That's excessive. It's necessary." His tone left no room for argument. "Someone knows where you are, knows your routine, knows enough to target you specifically. That's not random, Jarvis. That's calculated." The implications of his words settled over me like a heavy blanket. Someone was watching me, studying me, planning something. And worst of all, I had no idea who or why. Myron stood, still holding me securely. "We're going home. I'm working remotely for the rest of the week. You can't just abandon your company. Watch me." His eyes met mine with absolute certainty. "You are more important than any business deal, any meeting, any contract. You and our baby are my priority. Everything else can wait." As he carried me out of the conference room, I caught sight of employees quickly averting their gazes, pretending they hadn't been watching. The whispers would start soon if they hadn't already. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the threat hanging over us. Invisible but very real. And the terrifying question of what would come next. Myron's grip on my phone was so tight I worried the screen might crack. Every muscle in his body had gone taut, his alpha instincts screaming at him to eliminate the threat, to destroy anyone who dared come near me. "How long has this been happening?" His voice came out low and controlled, which somehow made it more terrifying than if he'd shouted. I stood there, caught between the truth and self-preservation. Telling him everything meant watching him spiral into a protective rage that might consume us both. Keeping quiet meant continuing to shoulder this burden alone. And I was so tired of being afraid. Jarvis. He set the phone down with careful precision and took my face between his hands, forcing me to meet his penetrating stare. Answer the question. Now, a week, I finally confessed, the words barely making it past my lips. Maybe 8 days. I lost count. His eyes flashed with that unmistakable alpha fury, pupils dilating, jaw clenching, the scent of his pheromones spiking with aggression. He inhaled deeply, clearly fighting for control over his baser instincts. 8 days. You've been carrying this for over a week and never said a word? I didn't want to worry you. Worry. The single word came out sharp enough to cut. Jarvis, someone is actively threatening the life I'm building with you. They're threatening our child. And you didn't think I deserved to know. I pressed my palm against his chest, trying to anchor him before he spiraled completely. I genuinely believed they would lose interest and move on. I thought you thought wrong. He yanked me into his arms, eliminating any space between us. Against his chest I could hear his heart racing, feel the barely contained fury vibrating through his entire frame. From this moment forward, you go nowhere without me. Not the bathroom, not the break room, nowhere. Understood? I nodded against his shoulder, but even as I agreed, dread settled in my stomach like lead. This wasn't over. Whoever was sending these messages had a plan, and we'd just started dancing to their tune. The next morning arrived too quickly. I'd barely slept, kept awake by nightmares of faceless threats and Myron's smothering protectiveness that somehow felt both comforting and suffocating. He'd already arranged for private security, 3 rotating shifts of ex-military contractors who looked like they could bench press cars. I was attempting to focus on work in his office, sketching out designs for the new product line, when his assistant knocked. Mr. Grayson, there's a Chester Hayes here requesting a meeting. He says it's urgent business. Every drop of blood drained from my face. Chester. That name alone conjured memories I'd spent years trying to bury. Obsessive phone calls, showing up uninvited, the possessive grip that left bruises, the words that made me feel owned rather than loved. Myron caught my reaction immediately. You know him. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. He's someone from before us. Understanding dawned in Myron's eyes, followed quickly by suspicion. Send him in, he told his assistant, then turned to me with an expression of steel. Stay behind me. Don't speak unless I give you permission. I wanted to argue, to assert my independence, but the protective aura rolling off Myron was so intense that I simply moved where he indicated. When the door opened and Chester walked in, I felt like I'd been transported back in time. He looked exactly the same, perfectly styled hair, designer suit, that charming smile that had once fooled me into thinking he was safe. But his eyes gave him away. They held that same unhealthy obsession I remembered. That hunger that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with ownership. Myron Grayson. Chester extended his hand like this was a normal business meeting. Myron didn't even acknowledge the gesture. State your purpose for being here. The words came out flat and emotionless, but I could sense the threat underneath. Chester's smile widened as his gaze swept the room, hunting until it landed on me. When he saw me and, more importantly, saw my visible baby bump, something ugly twisted across his features before he masked it. Jarvis. You look different, Mr. Hayes, I responded formally, moving even closer to Myron's protective presence. Chester's expression darkened, jealousy and rage flickering across his face before he controlled it. So the rumors are accurate. You're actually pregnant. Carrying his child. Myron moved between us in one fluid motion, completely blocking me from Chester's line of sight. I suggest you leave immediately before security removes you. I came with a legitimate business proposal. Chester protested, though his attention kept trying to slip around Myron to find me again. Surely we can discuss. We have zero interest in anything you're offering. Myron cut him off with absolute finality. Chester laughed, and the sound made my skin crawl. Jarvis, do you remember what I promised you? That you belong to me? That I would never let you go. No matter what. My stomach churned violently. Those were the exact words he'd used when I'd tried to end things, when I'd finally gathered the courage to escape his suffocating control. Hearing them again felt like being pulled back into a nightmare I thought I'd left behind. Myron grabbed Chester by the collar so fast I barely saw him move, slamming him against the wall with enough force to rattle the picture frames. If you ever address him again, if you so much as think like him, I will systematically destroy everything you've built. Your business, your reputation, your future, all of it will burn. Are we perfectly clear? Chester just smiled through the aggression, utterly unbothered. This isn't finished, Myron. Not even close. Security arrived then, pulling Chester away before Myron could do something we'd all regret. But even as they escorted him out, Chester's eyes found mine one last time, and the promise in them made me shudder. As soon as the door closed, Myron turned to me. Tell me everything, every detail about your history with him. Don't leave anything out. So I did. I told him about meeting Chester at a gallery opening, how charming he'd seemed at first, how gradually that charm had morphed into possessiveness, then obsession, the constant calls, the unexpected visits, the way he'd isolated me from friends and family, how he'd made me feel like I was losing my mind, like his behavior was somehow my fault, how it had taken months to finally break free, and even then I'd had to move cities to escape him completely. By the time I finished, Myron's face had gone completely blank, that terrifying calm that meant he was planning something dangerous. He's behind the messages. You can't know that for certain. I know. His voice carried absolute conviction. And I'm going to end this before he gets anywhere near you or our baby. The promise in his words should have comforted me. Instead, all I felt was a growing sense of dread, like we were standing on the edge of something dark and terrible, and any moment now we'd fall. The following days passed in deceptive tranquility, but I recognized it for what it was, the calm that precedes devastation. Myron had essentially confined me to the penthouse suite attached to his office, complete with around-the-clock security that rotated in 8-hour shifts. The confinement felt suffocating, like invisible walls closing in. But I understood his reasoning. He was protecting me the only way he knew how. I sat curled on the leather couch, reviewing design mock-ups on my laptop, when Myron returned from his afternoon meetings. His eyes found me instantly, conducting that automatic assessment he'd developed since the fall, checking my color, my posture, searching for any sign of distress. I'm fine, I offered with a small smile, answering his unspoken question before it could form. He crossed the room and positioned himself behind me, strong hands finding my shoulders and working out the tension gathered there. You've been staring at that screen for 3 hours straight, says the man who routinely works 16-hour days. I countered, unable to suppress the teasing lilt in my voice. His lips found the sensitive spot just below my ear. I'm permitted that luxury. You require rest, especially now. I closed the laptop and shifted to face him properly. Myron, I can't spend every waking moment trapped in this gilded cage. My sanity is starting to fracture. Then we'll find something calming to occupy your time, he suggested, settling beside me and drawing me onto his lap with practiced ease. What about shopping for baby essentials? My entire demeanor brightened at the suggestion. You're serious? You'd actually accompany me? Obviously. His palm spread across my rounded stomach, possessive and gentle simultaneously. I intend to select everything our son will need personally. You mean our daughter? I corrected with deliberate emphasis. Son, he insisted, that familiar smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. We ventured to the upscale shopping district, flanked by enough security personnel to make me self-conscious about the attention we drew. Myron remained utterly indifferent to the stares, moving through the exclusive baby boutique like he owned it, which, knowing him, he probably did by the time we finished. He systematically purchased everything in sight: miniature clothing sets, plush toys in every conceivable animal, furniture pieces that cost more than some people's cars. This is becoming excessive, I protested weakly when he reached for yet another stuffed bear, this one larger than the previous 9. There's no such thing as excess when it concerns our child, he stated with absolute conviction. I started to respond when movement near the store entrance caught my peripheral vision. My smile dissolved instantly. Chester stood there, positioned perfectly to observe us, his unwavering stare tracking my every movement with that intensity I remembered all too well. Myron registered the change in my expression immediately, following my line of sight. His entire bearing transformed in a heartbeat, shoulders squaring, jaw setting, that dangerous alpha energy rolling off him in waves. Remain here with the security detail, he commanded, already moving toward the entrance. Myron, wait, but he'd already crossed half the distance. I watched helplessly as they faced each other, Myron's intimidating presence versus Chester's unsettling composure. Distance prevented me from hearing their exchange, but their body language communicated volumes. Myron stood with barely restrained aggression, while Chester maintained that twisted smile that had once fooled me into thinking he was harmless. Then Chester's gaze shifted directly to me, and he mouthed words I could read with perfect clarity. "You'll be mine again." My heart plummeted into my stomach. Myron returned moments later, his expression carefully neutral, but I'd learned to read the tension in his frame. He took my hand firmly. "We're leaving immediately." The entire drive home passed in oppressive silence. I could practically hear the gears turning in Myron's mind, formulating plans I knew would be both elaborate and potentially dangerous. That night, as we lay in bed with me tucked against his chest, I finally gathered the courage to confront the elephant occupying the room. "What did Chester actually say to you?" Myron's arms tightened around me reflexively. "Nothing worth repeating or remembering. Myron, Jarvis." He shifted so we were eye to eye, his gaze intense and unwavering. "I give you my word Chester will never succeed in harming you. I'll ensure he can't get within 100 feet of you." I traced the strong line of his jaw with trembling fingers. "My fear isn't for myself. It's for you. Chester becomes truly dangerous when denied what he believes he deserves. Then let him attempt whatever he's planning." Myron growled, the sound vibrating through his chest. "He'll discover I'm equally formidable when protecting what's mine." He kissed me then, and that kiss carried promises of protection, devotion, permanence. I lost myself in the certainty of it, in him. My phone shattered the moment with its insistent buzzing. Chester's name illuminated the screen above a new message. "Enjoy tonight. It's your last peaceful one. Tomorrow everything changes." Myron read the threat over my shoulder, and his grip on me intensified to the point of discomfort. "That's the final straw. Tomorrow I'm handling this situation permanently." "Myron, please." My voice fractured around the edges. "Don't abandon me here. Not with this hanging over us." He pressed his lips to my forehead, lingering there. "I'm not going anywhere. Whatever comes next, we face it together. That's a promise." But neither of us could have anticipated just how terrifying tomorrow would actually become. The morning began with wrongness. Typically I woke wrapped in Myron's embrace, but today he was already awake and pacing while speaking in harsh, clipped tones on his phone. "I don't care about the cost or the methods required. I want a complete dossier on Chester Hayes. Every secret he's buried, every vulnerability he possesses, every mistake he's made." Myron's voice carried that cold, calculated quality that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. When he noticed I'd awakened, he ended the call abruptly and approached the bed. "Good morning, love. What's happening?" I asked, pushing myself into a sitting position with increasing difficulty as my pregnancy progressed. "Nothing that should concern you." He deflected, but I could see the machinations behind his eyes. He was orchestrating something significant. "Myron, please promise me you won't do anything reckless or dangerous." He cupped my face between his palms. "Everything I do serves one purpose: protecting you and our family. Trust me on that." I did trust him, but trust didn't eliminate the fear coiling in my gut like a living thing. The office atmosphere that day was charged with tension you could taste. Staff members whispered in corners, security presence had doubled overnight, and everyone moved with the nervous energy of people expecting catastrophe. Myron sequestered me in his private office, locking the door personally and stationing guards outside. "I have an unavoidable meeting," he explained, though reluctance colored every word. "Under no circumstances do you open this door for anyone, not even if they claim to be part of my team. Understood?" "You're genuinely frightening me right now," I admitted, unable to hide my anxiety. He pulled me into a crushing embrace. 1 hour. I'll return in exactly 1 hour. You have my word." But that hour stretched into the longest 60 minutes of my entire existence. I'd settled on the couch with a book, attempting distraction, when the fire alarm erupted throughout the building. Panic flooded my system instantly. Was this legitimate, or had Chester orchestrated this somehow? A security guard burst through the door. "Mr. Jarvis, we need to evacuate this floor immediately." "Where's Myron?" I demanded, my omega instinct screaming that something was catastrophically wrong. "He's already reached the ground level. He specifically sent me to escort you to safety." Everything about this felt incorrect. Myron would never leave me, particularly not during an emergency. I need to verify that with him directly first. "There isn't time." My phone rang, cutting off his protest. Myron's name flashed on the screen. Jarvis, listen very carefully. Do not leave that office. I repeat, do not leave. That guard is an imposter. He's not one of mine. My blood turned to ice in my veins. I looked at the guard and he withdrew a weapon from his jacket. Nothing personal, kid. Just following the paycheck. The door exploded inward before he could aim properly, and Myron stormed through with genuine security personnel. He disarmed the imposter with brutal efficiency before hauling me against his chest with desperate intensity. Are you injured? Did he touch you? His hands roved over me frantically, searching for damage. I'm unharmed, I managed through my trembling. Myron, what's going on? Chester orchestrated everything. Myron's voice shook with barely suppressed rage. False alarm. Hired imposter, elaborate plan to abduct you. Tears spilled down my cheeks unbidden. This has to end. It has to stop. It will, Myron vowed darkly. Today it ends permanently. Police flooded the building within minutes, taking the hired guard into custody. During interrogation he confessed everything. Chester had paid him handsomely to pose as security and extract me during the chaos of a fabricated emergency. Myron immediately mobilized his legal team. I want a restraining order filed within the hour. I want formal charges pressed. I want Chester Hayes utterly destroyed by the full weight of the law. But Chester had vanished, disappeared completely, as if he'd anticipated this exact outcome and planned his escape route accordingly. That evening, Myron didn't take me home. Instead, we drove to a location I'd never seen before. A sophisticated safe house hidden in the hills, completely secure and impossible to find without exact coordinates. We're staying here until law enforcement apprehends Chester, Myron explained as he guided me inside the minimalist but comfortable space. I felt overwhelmed by everything. The stress, the fear, the constant state of alertness. Then, without warning, a sharp pain lanced through my abdomen, stealing my breath. Myron, I gasped, doubling over. His attention snapped to me instantly. What's happening? Talk to me. The baby. My eyes widened as another contraction hit, stronger than the first. Something's very wrong. All color drained from Myron's face. He swept me into his arms and practically ran to the car, breaking every traffic law in existence as he raced toward the nearest hospital. Stay with me, Jarvis. Keep breathing. Just hold on, he pleaded, his hand crushing mine. The emergency room descended into controlled chaos as medical staff swarmed us. They rushed me into examination, hooking up monitors that beeped urgently. A doctor appeared, her expression professionally grave. You're experiencing premature labor contractions. At 6 months, this is extremely dangerous. We need to stop the progression immediately, or we'll have no choice but to deliver. Terror unlike anything I'd ever known seized me completely. My baby, our baby, wasn't ready. It was too soon. Far too soon. Myron stood beside my bed, gripping my hand like a lifeline, and I saw tears gathering in his eyes. You're both going to survive this. I won't accept any other outcome. Do you hear me? They administered medications, adjusted IVs, monitored constantly. The next 24 hours blurred together into a nightmare of fear and uncertainty. Doctors worked tirelessly to halt the contractions, to give our baby more time to develop, to keep both of us alive. Myron never left. Not for meetings, not for food, not for sleep. He remained in that uncomfortable chair beside my bed, holding my hand, whispering encouragement, willing us both to fight. This is my fault, I whispered during a moment of clarity between medication doses. All of this, Chester, the danger, the stress on the baby. Stop. Myron's voice was fierce. Don't you dare blame yourself for a madman's obsession. You are the greatest gift life has given me. This child is the greatest miracle, and I'll fight anything and everything to keep you both safe. His phone rang, the police again. We've located and arrested Chester Hayes. He's being charged with attempted kidnapping, stalking, harassment, and several other offenses. With the evidence we've gathered, he won't see freedom for a very long time. Relief crashed over Myron's features. He relayed the information to me, and I felt something inside me finally release the constant tension I'd carried for weeks. The fear that had become my constant companion. It's finished, Myron confirmed, pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. He can't hurt you anymore. You're safe. Our baby is safe. I cried then, tears of relief, of joy, of exhaustion finally catching up to me. The medical team kept me hospitalized for another week, monitoring constantly. The contractions gradually subsided and our baby stabilized. But complete bed rest was mandatory, non-negotiable. Myron transformed my hospital room into a makeshift office, conducting his entire business empire from the chair beside my bed so he could watch over me continuously. The company needs you actually present, I argued weakly. You need me more, he countered with absolute certainty. The company will survive my absence. You won't. Weeks passed in careful, measured increments. Finally discharged, I returned home under strict restrictions. No stress, no work, nothing but rest and careful monitoring. Myron became a man possessed with my care. He planned every meal for optimal nutrition, scheduled gentle exercises approved by the doctors, tracked every appointment, every vital sign, every tiny detail. His protectiveness bordered on obsessive, but I found I didn't mind. After everything we'd survived, his devotion felt like armor against the world. At 8 months, the doctors finally gave their approval. The baby was healthy, developing normally, and I'd made it through the danger zone. Labor began naturally on a peaceful Sunday morning. Myron drove to the hospital with terrifying speed, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Remember your breathing exercises, he coached, though his own breathing seemed more labored than mine. In through the nose, out through the mouth. You breathe, I gasped between contractions, and he managed a shaky laugh despite the circumstances. In the delivery room, when the final moments arrived, I was beyond exhausted, but Myron's voice kept me anchored, kept me pushing forward. You're incredible. You're so strong. I'm right here, exactly where I'll always be. Then a cry. Our baby's first cry piercing the air. It's a boy, the doctor announced. And Myron's expression transformed into something indescribable. Pure wonder, overwhelming love, absolute joy. They placed our son on my chest after cleaning him, and I stared down at the tiny, perfect human we'd created together. He was beautiful, with Myron's strong features already visible and my lighter coloring. He's absolutely perfect, Myron whispered, tears streaming freely down his face as he gently touched our son's impossibly small hand. The baby's fingers immediately wrapped around Myron's finger, holding tight. Our son, I breathed. Our entire world, Myron corrected, kissing me with infinite tenderness. The hospital kept us for observation, standard procedure for premature labor concerns, even though our son had arrived healthy at full term. We spent those days in a protective bubble, just the three of us learning to become a family. We named him Rowan, a strong name for what we hoped would be a strong, healthy child. Myron held him like he was made of spun glass, whispering promises about protection and love and a future free from fear. I will never allow harm to touch you, Myron vowed to Rowan, his voice thick with emotion. You are your father. You are my everything now. My purpose, my world, my reason. I watched them together, my alpha and our son, and felt my heart expand beyond what I'd thought possible. Discharge day arrived with a flurry of activity. Myron had the car seat inspected 3 separate times by different technicians, ensuring absolute safety. He drove home at exactly the speed limit, hyper-aware of our precious cargo. The house had been transformed during my hospital stay. The nursery was magazine perfect, every surface baby-proofed, every potential hazard eliminated. Myron had thought of everything. That first night challenged us in ways we hadn't anticipated. Rowan woke every 2 hours, crying with the desperate urgency only infants possess. We stumbled through feedings and diaper changes, 2 exhausted adults completely out of our depth, but determined to figure it out together. When morning finally arrived and Rowan fell into deeper sleep, Myron and I collapsed onto the couch in the living room. Utterly depleted, we survived the night, I observed, my voice hoarse from exhaustion. We did, Myron agreed, pulling me against his side, despite our combined state of dishevelment. And we'll survive every night after this, together, like we've survived everything else. I studied his face, this powerful alpha who'd been brought to his knees by a tiny infant, who'd transformed from ruthless CEO to devoted father in the span of a heartbeat. I love you, I said simply, because sometimes the most important truths need the simplest words. I love you infinitely more, Myron replied, kissing my forehead with reverent gentleness. You've given me things I never knew I needed. A family, a home, a reason to be better than I was. We both looked toward the nursery where Rowan slept peacefully, his small chest rising and falling with each breath. In that moment I understood something fundamental. All the struggle, all the pain, all the terror we'd endured. It had meaning now. It had led us here, to this perfect moment of peace. Our story hadn't been easy. It had been marked by obsession, danger, fear, and near tragedy. But it was ours, uniquely, completely ours. A week into parenthood, we'd established something resembling a routine. Myron had temporarily stepped back from daily operations at the company, promoting his most trusted executive to handle immediate concerns. His focus remained entirely on our small family. "You need to return to work eventually," I mentioned one afternoon while nursing Rowan. "The company can't function indefinitely without you." "The company functioned for decades before I took control. It will function now," Myron stated, with finality. "Right now, my family requires me more than any board meeting or contract negotiation." I didn't argue further. Truthfully, I cherished having him home, sharing these exhausting but precious early days together. One morning while Myron was handling a conference call and I was attempting to fold the mountain of baby laundry that seemed to regenerate spontaneously, the doorbell rang. Myron ended his call immediately, his protective instincts triggered. "Stay here," he commanded, moving toward the door. Through the window I saw a police officer standing on our porch. Myron spoke with him briefly before returning, his expression thoughtful. "Chester's trial date has been set," he informed me. "They're requesting victim impact statements. You're not obligated to participate if it would cause you distress." I considered carefully. Part of me wanted to never think about Chester again, to pretend that nightmare had never happened. But another part, the part that had fought so hard to build this life, wanted closure. "I'll do it," I decided. "I need to face him one final time on my terms, and show him exactly what he failed to destroy." Myron's expression filled with pride. "Whatever you choose, I'll be beside you every step." The trial occurred when Rowan was 6 weeks old. My mother had flown in to watch him, giving us peace of mind. Walking into that courtroom felt surreal, like entering a different lifetime where I'd been a different person. Chester sat at the defense table, and when our eyes met, I felt nothing. No fear, no anger, no lingering attachment. He was simply a stranger who'd once tried to own me and failed spectacularly. When my turn came to speak, I approached the stand with Myron's steadying presence behind me. I spoke clearly, without hesitation, detailing Chester's obsessive behavior, his refusal to accept rejection, his escalating threats that had culminated in attempted kidnapping. He tried to steal my freedom, my choices, my future, I concluded. But he failed, because I am stronger than his obsession, and I have built a life he can never touch. A family he can never destroy. He is irrelevant to my happiness. And that is the greatest failure of all, for someone who craved significance in my life. The judge sentenced Chester to 8 years, with additional restraining orders that would extend far beyond his release. As they led him away, he tried one last time to catch my eye, to assert some lingering connection. I simply turned away. He didn't deserve even that final acknowledgement. Outside the courthouse, Myron wrapped his arms around me. "How do you feel?" "Free," I answered honestly. "Completely, utterly free." We drove home to our son, to our life, to our future. Rowan was awake and fussy when we arrived, and the moment I picked him up, he settled against my chest with that complete trust only infants possess. "He knows his papa," Myron observed softly, watching us with undisguised adoration. That night, after Rowan had been fed and changed and rocked to sleep, Myron and I stood together in the nursery, watching our son dream whatever dreams infants have. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked quietly. "The complications I brought into your life? The danger? The chaos?" Myron turned me to face him, his expression fierce. "Never. Not for a single moment. You and Rowan are the best things that have ever happened to me. Everything before you was just existence." This, he gestured around us, encompassing our home, our child, our life together. "This is actually living." I kissed him then, pouring everything I felt into that connection. Gratitude, love, hope for all our tomorrows. Our story hadn't been perfect. It had been messy and complicated and sometimes terrifying. But it was ours, built on survival and choice and the fierce determination to protect what mattered most. And this wasn't an ending. This was just the beginning of everything we would build together, one day, one moment, one choice at a time, forever.